Guess who got brands talking? Brandlive.co.za.
Hello and welcome to Creative Ghettos, the show that explores various creative industries and profiles the Africans who push them forward. Each week, I unveil excellent and inspiring individuals within creative industries, including but not limited to fine and contemporary art, architecture, design, food, film, and literature. My name is Gwane Lukunene. Thank you for joining me right here on brandlive.co.za. This week's show is extra special. The Creative Ghettos team took a turn to 100% Design South Africa to get a first-hand experience of the meaning of high-end South African design. Every bit of the 5-day exhibition was well considered, from the apartment space by Mother City Hardware right to the stunning cafe by Uitlander. I got the chance to have a chat with 3 key people who were part of this year's show. The first being Kathy O'Cleary, who is one of 100% Design South Africa's creative directors. Kathy gave us an overview of the intentions of the show as well as the potential future of African design. Kathy, you are 5 years in. Well, 100% Design South Africa is 5 years in, 2018. What are some of the most central aims of this year's exhibition?
I think our industry has been suffering of late. The economy has been very difficult. So we wanted to create an exhibition where the trade could really showcase their phenomenal work. And I think it was really important for us to focus on things like materials, like wood. We've done an exhibition called Designing in Wood, and actually a lot of the designers here are working in wood, and we have phenomenal craftsmanship in that sphere. People who carve, people who create with modern technology. We're sitting in a beautiful cafe that's being created by a company called Outlander, and just show how amazing people's minds are when it comes to designing in one simple material. We have incredibly amazing young textile designers, mostly young black women who are coming up with some incredible stuff. One of them won our best textile design last night in our award ceremony, Lulu's Clan, and they're designing from their own identity, which is really important. So we like to give young designers platforms. We like to give our established designers a great place to trade. And I'm very pleased to say we've had record turnout this year of people queuing up to come to the show. So obviously there is a resurgence of interest in design. And I know people are trading, and that's really important for us, because there's no point in us building this show if people don't get to sell on it.
And the people that are buying a lot, have you noticed, are they more African, or are they from an overseas market?
We're predominantly, it's a local market, though I know that there's been orders going out to Egypt and Namibia and Botswana and a lot of the SADC countries. We're not getting European visitors as yet, and that's where we'd really like to build a profile. Because there is a huge hunger for design around Africa, especially South African design, that we're one of the leading countries in design in Africa. And we have the capabilities to export, we have the capabilities to inspire the rest of the world, and more and more interest from other parts of the world is coming to our shores.
How can people outside of the design industry be encouraged to learn about and buy African design products and services?
I think this is one of the reasons we started 100% Design South Africa, was so that people who are not involved in design get to understand it. And I think the audience we had in year one compared to the audience we have now, people are asking less questions. They're getting it. I think there has been an increase in level in design awareness, but I think people still get shocked when they see something of quality and that is produced in this country. We have amazing industry here. We have amazing designers. We have amazing craftsmanship. And we don't need to look to the rest of the world to start copying it. We're actually creating a new language in design, a new visual interpretation. We're looking at our own heritages. We're looking at the way we combine those heritages, the way we interact. Design, a lot of great design comes from collaboration. So you've got people like the team around 99 Jutta Street in Braamfontein. You've got younger and more established designers across all communities working together, and they've created this really sexy hub. A lot of them are here on the show, and from that strength and unity, it's like the power of 10. You just become 100, and that's what's happening now. Our industry is very supportive of young designers. As soon as new talent is spotted, people jump on it. We've got a lot of new talent here on the show with great sponsorship from people like Gauteng Tourism Authority, who've sponsored Young Gauteng. And those are very raw, straight out of college designers who need that exposure. And I know 2 or 3 already have had exposure to programs like the Nando's portal, which is one of the best supporters of our industry at the moment. They're going to be supplying restaurants around the world. So for the designers to get that exposure to not just people who may buy their products, but to other people in the industry is really important.
How has South African design expanded and become more leading edge over the past 5 years of 100% Design South Africa?
Because I think it's because our designers are brave and bold. We're not scared here. I think if you look at what's coming in from overseas into our retail stores, a lot of it's very generic. It's very dull. And then you get this kapow of any kind of African design that might be in that offering. Unfortunately, at the moment, I think it's still considered a theme rather than the dynamic global force it's about to become.
Wow.
Our designers, especially under 30, don't have any hang-ups from the past. They are looking in an entirely different way, right across Africa. I've traveled right across Africa, so I'm seeing it everywhere. A lot of it is emerging in the streets. And when you get a street culture, you get a future culture of gallerists, museum people, architects, head of fashion. The people who begin to create a street culture, they're not afraid. They're very comfortable being in an urban environment, and they're very comfortable developing and playing and collaborating, and they become the establishment 10 years down the line.
What are some of the qualities you look for when designers or artists looking to exhibit at this trade show?
I think there's several factors. One, curiosity. If a human being is curious, they're always going to try and push the boundaries, because curiosity comes with intelligence, and a lot of design is actually just an intelligent process, a process of like, I'm going to design a textile. I've been curious. I've looked and seen what everyone else is doing. I think I can do one step better, or I can play with what's been done before and reinterpret it in another way. So I think what people really don't realize is the amount of intelligence that goes into good design. There's a lot of bad design out there, and the sad thing is that bad design is more obvious than good design because it's jarringly wrong, and it doesn't work for you, or it upsets your eyes. So really good, intelligent design is often quieter. It's more considered, and that's what I look out for. I look out for people who are, even in a raw form. You know, there's a girl here on the show who is just playing with pieces of plastic woven into fabric, embroidering over it, digitally printing and stenciling over it. She doesn't know where she's going with it. But with a bit of direction, she will really take that whole process very far. She is just developing in an intelligent way without quite realizing where she's going. It'll come. And I know in 10 years' time she will become a big name, because she is working in isolation at the moment. She knows she's onto something. She needs direction, which we will hopefully give her. then you see the really established designers, like on designing in wood, we have William Combrook, who has to be one of the country's leading cabinet makers. His skill is second to none. He can make anything in any piece of wood. So to see that highly developed skill is really amazing. And William has also been helping a young new talent called Sifiso Shange, who has had exposure to working in William's workshop, and William immediately got where Sifiso was going with his design, and I think we see examples of that all over the exhibition, where younger people are collaborating with older people. Design is never done in a vacuum. It always needs to involve people, because ultimately you are designing for people.
Yeah. Earlier you were talking about how overseas markets almost look at, or have been looking at, African design or creativity as a theme, as opposed to something that is impactful. What do you think the future of African design looks like if we're trying to no longer be themes overseas and really being the intelligent designers that we actually are?
I think it's already beginning to happen. If you look at the projected figures of what's going to happen in this continent, we're about to have a youth quake, because the population is going to explode in the next 50 to 100 years. And when in 1950 the African population was about 9% of the world's population, in 2100 it's going to be 39% of the world's population. So it's going to be something that the world cannot ignore. And as we gain confidence, we are going to be developing our own styles, our own creativity. And we're really beginning to see that emerge now. As I say, it's emerging on the streets. 10 years from now, it'll be more established. One of the directions we can go in right now is, because we have, most of our products are handmade. They come from cultural heritage. We can mix and match that. I mean, there's amazing collaboration on the show here between an Afrikaans girl and a Xhosa woman, and they're sharing their cultural heritage. That sort of force is really powerful, and I think where we can really strongly go is into the luxury market, because we cannot compete with China or India on scale and on volume. But we have products that have that heritage and that provenance that luxury brands need. Every luxury brand has a history, a story, and it's about handmade products. Yes. A Louis Vuitton bag is handmade. It comes from generations of French history. Our designers can go into that realm and create beautiful, luxurious products, and some of them are already beginning to do that. That is the sort of upper tier of the market is where a lot of our designers can go.
Internationally renowned ceramic artist and the co-founder of Imiso Ceramics, Andile Kyalvane, was this year's featured designer. Andile was tasked with creating 100 bowls, which were all unique and gorgeously finished. We spoke about a range of subjects, such as his design inspiration, as well as creative fatigue, something I rarely get to discuss. What was your design inspiration for this collection?
All right. So for 100% design, what I did, I created a collection called Indonga, which is inspired by the Dongas, right? So the Donga is the soil erosion. So coming back from the Eastern Cape as a childhood, so one of my ways of creating, I always find like a familiar, the childhood memories or my past experiences or immediate experiences. So in this case, the Dongas, this is a place where it was my childhood, like a playground. So we will slide, we'll go and dig the clay, because as the erosion, it exposes all the layers and then eventually expose the clay. Now, that had to happen with these bowls, because for some reason, I had created a bowl 5 years ago, it was in California, that started this whole collection, and that's what happens with the residencies and places that I go to. So I'll explore some of the ideas that I have in my sketchbook and then take it from there, because I couldn't do that when I'm in the studio in my everyday, because you are to fulfill other things that are happening at that time. So for 100% design, then I dug in, and then I was like, this collection I would want to explore Indonga as a reference, and you will see in each and every one of them, you will see the consistency of the tone effect of the clay and that sort of rough. Yeah.
I actually wanted to comment on the look of the balls. For me, you know, they have a lot of natural movement, and also it's almost a hypnotic movement. I don't know if that was intentional. Why was that important that you had to show that through these pots?
One of the things is that clay is flexible, and for me as a medium, I choose it as a medium to express myself, right? So what you do, if any impression that you put onto the clay while it's still wet, it preserves it forever after it's been fired. Now, as I've been doing this for many years, I understand the material like very well, that I can manipulate in one way or another as I wish. And one of the things is that I'm a perfectionist, right? But at the same time, I can let loose. Like there's a playfulness about the pieces as you see them, that I also leave evidence of how the clay itself is plastic, how is moving, how is sort of like simply.
I like the plastic comment, because even with the colors or the paint that you actually use, that also gives it almost a plastic and non-natural form to it.
Exactly, and for me, we would notice that obviously they're not functional, other than they're more decorative, right? So one of the things I wanted to do is the choice of where the color needs to go and expose also that's the raw clay itself, is to expose the color that inspired the clay. I mean the bowls, like the red earth, the terracotta, exactly that's the color of the earth from home. You know, like the black clay, which represent like the fertile soil itself, and then white clay, that's like that I use as well. It's more for purity. You'll see, like we use it as initiates, like to cover one's face, and that's sort of like, you know, part of the process. So there's a lot of thinking within just the story itself, the medium itself, the clay, and the application of the color and the line, and I mean obviously you will see as my signature line, the scarified motif is always there, which is the one that is inspired by Ukachula or the scarification. So in any collection that I come up with, there's always that, but then the rest of other effects will be based on what collection it is at that time.
Okay. So what went into making such an extensive collection? Because 100 pieces is not easy to come up with. So you can take us through concept and right up to the physical process.
So for me, when Kathy and Lawrence, they said, okay, feature designer, and we would like you to represent ceramics. Which is an honor in that sense, as they're highlighting ceramics as a medium. For me, then already that triggers, like a memory, like the thinking. So what am I going to do? You get stuck a little bit, but then go to my references and then see again, like for my archives of my ideas. Okay, Indonga will be then the collection. So I would sit with Alexis, come up with the concept. So how are you feeling right now? What inspires you now, or what would you like to explore? And that's where we start with the narrative. So Alexis will paint it beautifully with words and sort of like come up with the mood board of references of the things that speaks to me, speaks to what we relate both to. You understand? So that's the beginning, and then from there, then I'll start sketching. You see, like I've got a whole lot of sketches on the wall. So it starts like that. So for each bowl, then I had a sketch for each bowl. So it's as if I did 200 bowls from, that, you know what I mean?
Word.
So, and that's my process. And for me, it needs to, when I'm sketching it, it's like I'm solving a technical, problem, and I'm almost realizing it at that time. When I come to the actual medium, yes, it may be similar to that, but then the medium itself, the clay, will take me through that. So then I had to think of what techniques that I'm going to be using. So I used basically all the techniques of the making of the ceramics, from the drawing, slip casting, press molding, pinching, just hand building, and really manipulating the clay as I can, because I can control it, but at the same time allowing it to be what it needs. Yeah, exactly. That's the respect that I have for the medium, but also to give honestly to it as well. Because what's also very important for me when I create, so I created an atmosphere whereby I'll put on a piece of music that will inspire that. So that will trigger, because the music, what the music does, it takes me back, right? And then the smell of impepo as I will be bending it during that time. So that's a childhood, like like a smell has something to do with tree that reminds you of a place, and exactly, that's what happened. So I've gone through that process, and so I'll work on maybe a 10 set at a time, and then you'll see there will be sort of like a flow of elements that are relating into those series, and then the next time do another. But then I would say maybe 30 of them. I decide, okay, the next stage is to be putting color, and then all of that. Then because there need to be a rhythm as I'm working on the body of work like that, and that's how it came about.
I like how you spoke about manipulating the fabric and also allowing it to breathe, because there's a lot of letting go in that process, and that's, I think as creatives sometimes we want to be involved at every point of the creation process.
What is amazing with ceramics as well, like you, and I mean even for me is like it's clay, and you have a lot of control, but then there's a certain stages where you do not, because if it wants to do this, it's going to do this. So we have, as all the potters or ceramicists, they say they have, so you put your pots into the kiln, right? This is now when we fire them. So we have to pray to the kiln gods, because you don't have any control of what happens in there. You may put all your work, whole month and everything, but if anything happened wrong there, they were not happy. So you need to always have to appease them.
You have to have a good
You need a good relationship with them.
kiln
Yeah,
gods.
definitely. That's what
Okay,
it is.
lastly, you only create once-off pieces. Do you ever take creative strain?
Yes, I do. And this is also, if say happen, someone, a client for instance, would say, could you customize a piece for me? Right? Now this is where it's like someone is trying to, basically it's an uncomfortable zone, right? But yes, I allow that, but it's like, so I have to interpret what it is that they want, and sometimes it's not easy because they want something, but I cannot interpret that. But what I do is that, so you came to me because you saw the quality, something drew you, to my work, and I communicate in this way. I would ideally want you to understand that for what you're asking me, 85 to 90%, it will be me interpreting you. So that's the only thing you will get. So it works like that.
Yeah.
Unless for instance, where they accommodated is based on the measurement, perhaps this needs to fit a certain space, of course I will do that, or a specific color, but sometimes then I would add my own color because this is how I feel right now. Do you know what I mean? So those kind of things happen is to try, the strain is to be, can I interpret this well, or do I want to work with this person the way that they are approaching me? Because there needs to be a connection when I'm working with you as well. That spiritual connection will make that piece, because it's a collaboration now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And hopefully at the end of it,
We're both happy. Yeah, because I can say that's an Andile piece as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Andile. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. In a country where creative industries are not very well funded by the public or private sector, it's always promising to come across a company that sees the importance of creativity. Cement company PPC invests in creatives through its Imaginarium Awards. Daniel van der Merwe, the PPC Imaginarium Awards lead organizer, gives us a clearer view of how the company is encouraging a positive creative economy. Daniel, please tell me about the PPC Imaginarium Awards. What are they? When were they started, and what has been the intention for the awards?
Okay, so the PPC Imaginarium was established 4 years ago. In fact, we're about to enter into our 5th cycle, which is very special. It's a kind of a special landmark. But in short, the PPC Imaginarium was established by PPC, the cement company, as a way to, firstly, to support design and innovation in South Africa. Secondly, to enable, profile and support emerging designers and artists in this country, which, as we know, sport unfortunately gets the lion's share of sponsorship and support in this country. And I think design and innovation is completely underfunded. So it's good to see that companies such as PPC prepare to put their money where their mouth is and to support our creative industries. And then thirdly, I think what is important is to realize that cement and concrete, of course, are extremely versatile as a material. And so what we try to do is to encourage artists and designers to use cement as a medium, as an inspiration, and as a material in creating concretes, which is not only cheap to manufacture. You don't need any specialized equipment because you can do it in your backyard. So unlike, say, pottery or working with steel or wood or stone, where you need specialized equipment, you need the most basic of tools and lots of imagination. So as a material, we promote it amongst the artists to allow them experimentation and also to come up with new ideas in terms of product development. So far it's been very good. We've grown into the country's biggest platform that supports artists and designers. Last year we had 924 people registered. Out of that we had 260 physical submissions for judging, out of which we selected 58 finalists. It's also the most best paid, if I may use the word, a best paid platform in that we give physical monetary awards, so 50,000 Rand for first prize in all 60 categories, 15,000 Rand as a follow-up, and then an overall winner can win 100,000 Rand, which I think for any young designer is quite a lot of money. And so besides the fact that we've been able to profile and promote them, for example, last year the exhibition, we estimate about 87,000 people saw the exhibition, which I think is unheard of for any exhibition to get those kind of numbers. And through our social pages like Facebook and Instagram, we've got 21,000 followers on Facebook, for example. So we use all these platforms to profile and promote our finalists, which I think is a fantastic way for a young designer or artist to become established towards a professional career.
Emerging creatives, why would you recommend that people invest more time, interest, and money to this particular group of people?
You're talking about?
Emerging creatives.
You know, I can say it in a very short sentence. I always say it jokingly, but I actually mean it very serious. I always say the only currency left in the world is creativity. The rest you can Google.
Okay.
So I think adding to that is that any country, if you look carefully at the countries where there's been phenomenal economic growth, that economic growth, think about countries say like South Korea, Japan, the Asian tigers, and even countries in Europe, Italy and France, America, are countries where innovation has been at the forefront. Through innovation, new products, new possibilities, new solutions can be developed. Those are the countries, those are the economies that grow, those are the countries and the economies that create jobs, and those are the countries that are at the forefront of economic development. So to me, maybe I might be biased, but I think a country's creatives should be protected and supported. They are the goose that's laying the golden eggs.
And how would you say we can I mean, earlier you were talking about how a lot of, a lot of money goes into the sports sector. How do you think that we can ensure that we are retaining our creative talent so that they're not poached by overseas markets?
Something which I find very irritating is the fact that if a company support or sponsor a sport event, they get tax rebates. In this country, if you support creativity or design, you don't get a tax rebate. So that's something which I think we need to address collectively as designers through various forums, that the government should be pressurized to allow for sponsorship of creative events and creativity per se. There should be tax rebates for that. Why should people get a tax refund for sponsoring a soccer event? In any case, I believe that sport is the opium of the masses.
Okay. Right. So the creative industries that PPC Imaginarium Awards include are pretty extensive, right? Why is this? There is jewelry design, fashion, architecture, art, etc. Your recent winner is an artist, in fact. Why is this?
Well, before we started the PPC Imaginarium, there was a competition that was run, an award system that was run for 32 years. It was called the Young Concrete Sculptors Award, which was sponsored by PPC. And when I started at PPC, I went to the board and said, I think it's very unfair to just promote and profile sculptors. I think all the main design and innovation disciplines in the country should be given an equal opportunity to profile their work and their innovation. And that's how we decided, and we narrowed it down to the 6 main disciplines, namely sculpture, fine arts, jewelry, fashion, film, architecture, and I missed one.
Yeah. Well,
Six
Yeah.
in total.
Yeah.
6 in total, yeah. So, and it's very interesting when you look at the work as a body of work, the incredible diversity from industrial design that comes up with practical alternatives like a concrete bicycle or a concrete speaker, through to sculpture, which makes a more theoretical commentary, through to jewelry, which is, of course, wearable, utilitarian, but also, in many cases, make strong conceptual statements about socioeconomic issues.
Now, 2017-2018 marked a pretty cool year or milestone for you guys as you've now entered the Zimbabwean market, and I think you've just announced your first winner for the Architecture Prize from Zimbabwe. Are there exciting creative movements happening in that country that the world should be aware of?
What was phenomenal was the response in Zimbabwe. I think what is quite sad, as we know, Zimbabwe, the economy has been in decline for many years, even though there's now a sense of optimism and a new renewed sense of hope. And architects, artists, and designers in Zimbabwe have really been in a survivalist mode, because that's, of course, seen as not essential and as seen as a nice to have. And so the creative community in Zimbabwe really grabbed the opportunity to participate in the PPC Imaginarium Zimbabwe with both hands. It was incredible to see. We had a workshop in Zimbabwe with the artists, and over 200 people attended. There was such enthusiasm, such energy. And Zimbabwe has got a very strong creative culture. If you go and you look at these soapstone sculptures, it's unique in the world. It's exquisite. And there's an amazing established tradition of crafts, be it in weaving, be it in stone sculpture, as we said, or even working with wood. And so we decided to introduce the PPC Imaginarium, not only to promote them, but also to introduce new modes and new ways of making and thinking to those sculptors. So, for example, by teaching them basic techniques of casting and mold making in concrete, they can mass produce aspects instead of trying to do one-off things by hand, and they can do it quite cheaply. So if they are into making objects which can be sold to tourists, or even artwork or jewelry or anything, it allows them to mass produce aspects. Of course, this was the first year. The response was overwhelming. We received incredible work, very strong conceptual work. I mean, the winning entry was a very powerful piece of sculpture. Very simple. It's just a big loaf of bread that's been sliced, and it just says everything about bread and butter issues. At that stage, the price of bread just went up again in Zimbabwe, and it's becoming, even as a staple diet, as a staple food, unaffordable to most Zimbabweans. So I'm very encouraged by that, and we will continue to grow the Imaginarium in Zimbabwe, but also, PPC has got a presence in 9 African countries, and the idea is to see if we can replicate the success story of PPC Imaginarium in South Africa and in Zimbabwe, to see if we can replicate it in other African countries such as Rwanda, Ethiopia. We're looking at Botswana, because all those countries, most African countries, don't have a very well established support system or platform for creatives or for design.
Do you think that that is related to politics? And if it is, how do you think the general public can help solve that issue?
I think it's an educational issue. I think all these African countries that I've mentioned have got very strong soccer teams. Sport is well supported and well developed. The country have got sport bodies that are supported by the government. Sport is promoted at school. And I think it's time that we, as creatives, stand up and actually communicate the importance of design and of innovation to the politicians, so that they realize the value and that money invested in these fields are money well invested. So organizations such as BASA, Business Arts South Africa, the British Council, the Goethe Institute, the Alliance Française, all of these are organizations which are established in other parts of Africa. And we are trying to see how we could maybe collaborate in some cases with some of them to assist in this goal, to assist in that educational process, to make the politicians and the companies, the commercial companies in those countries, realize why it is so important to support design and innovation.
And then just lastly, why is 100% Design South Africa essential to the growth of the design industry in the country?
I think, you asked 100%.
Yeah, 100% Design South Africa.
Okay. I think 100% Design is a fantastic initiative because it is, to me, the premier and the most important platform where young South African designers and innovators can showcase their work, especially emerging designers. And as you know, last year over 55,000 people moved through this exhibition hall and saw the work. And every young designer that are here and that you speak to will tell you they have had overwhelmingly positive responses. They've received lots of orders. There's a lot of buyers, local buyers and buyers from overseas that come here to scout for talent. So to me, this is the premier platform for any young designer or any young creative to showcase the world, their work to the world, and to allow them to be put in contact with potential buyers. There's that old saying, if you wink in the dark, nobody sees you.
I love it.
Harnessing the power of talk radio. Brandlive.co.za